I've been picking up another pattern in my recent conversations, whether it's with retailers, manufacturers, financial services, or even in the public sector. The nature of what I'm being asked is starting to change. So a year ago, it would be questions around what sustainability software or platform should I be investing in? Or how do I improve my carbon reporting and prepare for the next wave of regulation? Don't get me wrong, I still get those questions, but it's not the first question that comes up. Something much bigger is surfacing, which is how do I build sustainability capability as my organization transforms around AI? There's been a lot of talk around becoming an AI-first organization, and it's a conversation that I'm becoming super fascinated by. I don't think it's about software anymore. It's about where sustainability capability lives. Oh my God, that's a bit of a tongue twister. But should it remain within specialist platforms and owned by a small team of experts? Or should it be embedded into the way procurement, operations, finance, product teams make decisions every single day? Nowhere was that shift more obvious to me than in my own behavior, because at the same time, I'd been using Amazon Quick almost every day. And like most people, I thought it would help me work faster, summarize documents, write better emails, find information, pull knowledge from across the business into one place. And that's exactly what it did. But that's not what stayed with me. I realized I was opening fewer applications because my thinking started to shift. Instead of thinking, what system has the answer? I was kind of like, well, why don't I just ask the question? And more often than not, it actually worked. At first, it felt like a really small change. Then I realized it wasn't, because it was one of those moments where you suddenly know you're probably not going back. For decades, we've organized work around software. If you needed procurement information, you'd open up the procurement application. If you needed sustainability data, you'd open the sustainability platform. That's just how work worked. The question now is becoming, where does work start? The more I used it, the more I realized I wasn't just answering questions. I was pulling together information that's always just lived in different places. Supplier data, contracts, sustainability information, years of organizational knowledge. And that made me wonder, if we're not starting with the application anymore, what role does the application actually play? And if that's changing, what else is changing with it? The question I genuinely have not been able to stop thinking about is, when AI becomes the interface, where does the value move? Every major technology shift changed where value is created. The internet did, mobile did, cloud did. They didn't necessarily destroy value, they just, again, changed where it was created, who captures it, and redefined the capabilities organizations needed to build in order to remain successful. And from everything I'm seeing, AI will be no different. When I first sat down to work on this episode, I thought I was going to be talking about sustainability software, but I quickly realized that that wasn't the case. If anything, it's a story about what happens when the question becomes the starting point instead of the application. And I have a feeling that changes way more than just software. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just a technology shift. It's a shift in how work happens. For years, work started off with software. I mean, think about it in your own day. So when you first open your laptop, you're probably not thinking or asking or typing in, what's the most important decision I need to make today? It's probably more like, I need to check Salesforce or open up SAP or pull some latest numbers from my sustainability platform. And that's just how enterprise software evolved. Applications slowly became the front door to how we get work done. But something's beginning to change. More and more work starts with a question. Not where do I find this, but what do I need to know? And maybe that's the part I find most interesting, because curiosity is one of the most human qualities we have. And for years, we've spent so much time finding information, moving information, translating information between systems. What if AI started taking more of that on? What if it gives us space to do things that humans are uniquely good at, like asking better questions, making better judgment calls, connecting ideas, imagining beautiful, bold possibilities? That feels like a much more exciting future than just working faster. Imagine asking, which suppliers create the best balance of cost, resilience, and carbon risk? Or where are there the biggest opportunities to reduce carbon without increasing costs? Or what happens if we manufacture closer to demand? These are not sustainability questions. These are not procurement questions either. These are business questions, and no single application has all of the answers. It emerges by connecting lots of different pieces together. That's why I don't think applications are going to disappear. In fact, far from it. I think specialist software is only going to become more valuable, except its role is going to change. Instead of being the place where work begins, it's going to become the intelligence layer behind the answer. And once I started looking at it through that lens, a very simple flow started to emerge, which is you ask a question to AI and it starts to pull through the various different data sources, whether it's finance information, procurement, sustainability, your ERP system, your CRM, your supplier data, and out comes one trusted answer. Ultimately, I don't think people care that much about which application produced the answer. I think the thing they care most about is whether or not it can be trusted. So if work increasingly starts with a question and not an application, where does competitive advantage come from? And you know me, I love my frameworks, so this is what I'm calling the enterprise intelligence stack. I'm using sustainability to illustrate it, but the more conversations I have across industries, the more I'm realizing the pattern is probably much broader. It might look a little bit simple, but it's a framework that's helped me make sense of how organizations can create value in an AI-first world. At the foundation is something no AI company can build for you. Your enterprise knowledge, not public knowledge, your knowledge. Your suppliers, your contracts, your operations, your products, years of decisions, relationships, and organizational context. Every organization has a completely different fingerprint, and no foundation model knows your organization the way your organization does. The second layer is trusted domain expertise. This is why I actually think specialist sustainability software becomes even more valuable, not because of the interface, but because of what's inside it. Carbon methodologies, life cycle assessments, biodiversity metrics, assurance, regulatory interpretation. That's decades of accumulated scientific and technical expertise. AI doesn't recreate that, it reasons with it. Then comes the layer I'm most interested in, enterprise intelligence. This is where your organization connects those two worlds, your enterprise knowledge with trusted domain expertise. And that's where something interesting starts to happen. You're no longer producing another dashboard. You're making better decisions. Which supplier should we invest in? Where should we manufacture? Which products are likely to be more resilient 5 years from now? Those aren't sustainability questions. Again, these are business questions. And then right at the top comes AI. But perhaps not in the way we've been thinking about it. AI becomes the interface, the place where people explore, challenge, test, and ask better questions. And this is the part I keep coming back to, which is AI isn't necessarily going to be the competitive advantage, especially as it starts to scale and become even more cost competitive and accessible. It's a connector. The intelligence comes from everything that sits underneath it. And I think that's why the question is starting to shift. Instead of which AI model is the best, I think a much more interesting and potentially billion-dollar question is, what can your AI reason across that no one else can? Because that's much harder to replicate. And when I started thinking about it from that lens, that's when I stopped thinking about replacing software and I started to think about connecting intelligence. Again, I'm using sustainability to bring the framework to life, but you can see how it could apply across finance, procurement, and even healthcare. But ultimately, it's these 4 layers. Enterprise knowledge, which is unique to every organization. Trusted domain expertise, which changes depending on what domain you operate in. And enterprise intelligence that enables better decision making. And finally, where you and I get to use, the AI interface. So what does this all mean? One thing I'm sure is that if we're thinking about AI as a technology project, then we're probably thinking too small. I don't even think it's primarily a technology transformation. It's an enterprise transformation. And one of the biggest implications is enterprise intelligence. For years, we've invested in huge amounts of time to make enterprise information structured, trusted, and usable. And that's what enabled enterprise software to help our organizations transform the way it operates. But if I'm going to be honest, I think many of us are sitting on a gold mine without even realizing it. We're talking years of supplier relationships, operational excellence, commercial decisions, product knowledge, sustainability data. AI doesn't create those assets for us. It simply gives us a fundamentally new way to use it. And I think that's a really important distinction because that same investment is about to become even more valuable. AI changes what becomes possible when knowledge is connected, which brings me onto sustainability. For years, sustainability data has largely been treated as reporting data, important for disclosures, investors, regulators, but increasingly, what folks are starting to realize is that it's actually operational data. Data about suppliers, products, manufacturing, logistics, energy risk. In other words, it's becoming enterprise data. And I don't think that's happening by accident. Reporting requirements and evolving regulatory landscape is pushing organizations to build that data foundation that until recently simply didn't exist. Today, it might feel like a heavy compliance exercise, but I actually think it's laying the foundations for enterprise intelligence. For years, we collected sustainability data because we had to. Increasingly, we'll value it because it helps us make better decisions. And I think that's a monumental shift because it changes how we think about specialist software too. And this is where sustainability platforms have a huge opportunity, not because organizations necessarily need another interface, but because AI still needs trusted expertise. Carbon methodologies, life cycle assessments, biodiversity metrics, regulatory interpretation, scientific rigor. That's the intelligence layer, which makes me think software companies might need to evolve the question they're asking, which is from how do we build a better interface for our customers to why should enterprise AI come to us when it needs trusted sustainability expertise? And then I started to think about all of the lean, mean sustainability teams out there. For years, we've been the custodians of sustainability data. I mean, honestly, sometimes I feel like we're the human API between sustainability software and the rest of the business, if you know what I mean. But what happens when enterprise AI becomes the interface instead? I actually think that's one of the most exciting parts of this transition, right? Which it actually frees sustainability teams from spending their time retrieving information, answering the same questions over and over again, and manually connecting data across systems. It creates more space for the work that we humans are uniquely good at. Seeing around corners, navigating difficult trade-offs, connecting different ideas across functions, and helping the business make better decisions. Because even though we've lost sight of it here and there, that was always the goal. Not to make sustainability better at reporting, but making sustainability part of every single part of how the business operates. So where does this leave us? The more we've been on this journey together, the more I've realized that, yeah, it's not about sustainability software. And you know what? I don't even think this is about AI. This is about how organizations evolve. With every single major technology shift, it changes more than the technology itself. It changes the way organizations work. The Industrial Revolution reorganized physical work. The internet reorganized information. Cloud reorganized computing. And I think AI is starting to reorganize knowledge. And it's probably a much bigger shift than many of us appreciate today. Over the last couple of years, we've been asking what models, what assistant, what platform, but I don't think these are the questions that are going to define the next decade. Increasingly capable AI will become widely available, so access won't be the advantage. It's what organizations build on top of it. And I think this is what sits at the heart of this conversation, which is increasingly AI is not going to be the competitive advantage. If anything, it starts to reveal it. It reveals whether knowledge flows across the organization or remains trapped in silos. Whether expertise is reusable or it stays locked within individual teams. Whether people spend their time searching for information from all these different sources or solving meaningful problems. Sustainability is the lens we're using today, but I think this applies to any domain with decades of trusted expertise. Every single organization has knowledge that nobody else has, and every profession has experience that's been built over generations. And the opportunity here is not to replace that wisdom, it's to connect it. So for me, the question isn't how do we use AI? It's the trifecta of what kind of knowledge do we have that's genuinely unique? How do we make it trusted and how do we make it accessible? Okay, one final thought that I keep coming back to, which is we often call something technology until it's no longer visible. So we don't talk about using electricity or going on the internet anymore because We just do. And if AI is on the same path to becoming that invisible layer connecting our businesses, our economy, societies, communities, maybe that's when we'll stop talking about AI and thinking about it so much. And the capability itself is not going to be that competitive advantage. It's going to be the organizations that sit behind it. And so I really think that we're moving beyond the age of artificial intelligence to the age of enterprise intelligence. And I think we're only just getting started.